The Force is light and full of shadows. Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon.
I've got to save you. 23 years old and carrying the entire galaxy in 5 words. You already have, Luke. His real voice, not the one built by engineering and grief, but the one that belonged to Anakin Skywalker before Anakin Skywalker learned what he was capable of doing to people he loved. The warmth of it, the lightness, the incomprehensible peace of having done, finally, one right thing at the end of a long list of wrong ones. Light, then silence, then one sound. Inhale, click, exhale, hiss. He wakes in hell, not the abstract hell of guilt or memory, the specific material, unambiguous hell of being sealed inside the suit. The respirator is deafening from the inside. It is not a sound so much as a weather system. It fills the entire skull, crowds out everything else, reminds every nerve in his body on a 15-second cycle that the air he is breathing was not chosen. It was prescribed, engineered. The air of a body that Palpatine decided would not be allowed to die, because a dead man is a weapon that cannot be aimed. Beyond the respirator, wind. A howl, industrial low, the particular mournful register of air that has traveled through Tibanna gas processing equipment before it reaches you. He knows the smell. He knows this place. He knows exactly when this is. The HUD is red. Everything is red. Data overlays stack across his vision in the architecture Vader built across 19 years of muscle memory. Structural integrity of the gantry beneath his feet, atmospheric pressure, heat signatures, range to target. A target designation is active in the upper right corner of his vision. He reads it. Rebel combatant. Priority capture. Beneath that, a name. Skywalker Luke. He goes very still. The pain finds him in the stillness. It was always there. It is never not there. But movement keeps it at a functional distance. The body's animal insistence on forward momentum drowning out the grinding, omnipresent reality of the suit's nerve interface. When he stops, the pain arrives. Everywhere. Not the clean, definable pain of a wound. The architectural pain of a body that should not still be alive, kept moving by engineering and force and Palpatine's refusal to let any of his tools rust. His first internal response is not tactical. No. Not this. Not. He died. He was free. He was light and warmth, and Luke's face and the specific, exquisite relief of a choice made correctly after a lifetime of choices made wrong. He was done. The suit was gone. I was free. The HUD blinks. The wind howls. I died and I was free. He lets the animal horror crash through, lets it break against whatever is left of him after everything that has happened to him, and everything he has done, and the long cold distance between those two categories. When the wave passes, what remains is something that looks a great deal like a man who has already survived the worst thing imaginable, and is therefore not frightened of whatever comes next. He breathes. He looks down. There is Luke Skywalker, 22 years old, pressed against the gantry railing with nowhere to go, the clouds of Bespin visible thousands of meters below, through the open shaft, the constant wind pulling at his hair. His right wrist ends wrong, the clean, cauterized cut of a lightsaber, the arm held instinctively against his chest. He has lost his weapon, he has lost his hand, he has run out of everything and he knows it. He looks up at the black mask. His expression is not hate. It is not even fear, not exactly. It is grief, the particular grief of someone who has loved something beyond all reason and cannot stop, not even here, not even now, the grief of a son who came looking for his father and found the thing that replaced him. Anakin knows this expression. He watched it on this face once before, across a medical bay over a dying man's body, a young man choosing to believe in the light inside something that had spent 2 decades actively disproving its existence. The voice of Vader rises in his chest, smooth and practiced and 22 years deep. Come with me. It is the only way. He does not say it. He does not say anything. For the span of 3 breaths, his breaths, the respirator's breaths, the same thing in this body, he stands at the top of the gantry with his son below him, and the full catalog of his life open in his mind like a wound that has never been given enough time to close. He drops to his knees. The suit's servos scream under the sudden weight shift, metal fatigue, hydraulic complaint, the sound of a machine that was not built for this. Darth Vader, the black architecture of 2 decades of terror, the most feared thing in the living galaxy, kneels on a carbonite gantry in the belly of Cloud City, and through the respirator, through the modulator that has stolen his voice for 19 years and remade it into something designed to cause fear, a sound comes out that belongs to neither. Luke. The wind, the shaft below, his son staring up. I am so sorry. Luke does not understand what he is hearing. His body makes the decision before his mind can catch it. One involuntary step back, toward the question of what happens at the edge of a gantry when there is nothing left to step onto. His feet find the lip, his balance goes. Anakin moves before he has decided to move. Not the commanding reach, not the telekinetic grip that 19 years in the suit had made his default, the grip that treated the Force like a demolition instrument. This is something older than Vader. This is the reach of a man trying to catch something he has spent 23 years failing to hold. Luke drops. Still drops because the Force is not magic and the gantry is the gantry, and physics does not negotiate. But he drops slowly. The Force bleeds velocity from the fall in stages, a deceleration that must look, from the outside, like the laws governing heavy objects taking a brief and principled leave of absence. Luke hits the weather vane structure below the gantry, hits it hard enough to feel, not hard enough to break. He grabs, his one functional hand closes around the structure. He holds. He is alive. He is below Anakin now, out of reach, clinging to the structure in the pink-orange light of Bespin's cloud cover. He looks up once more. Anakin stands at the edge and looks down at his son, damaged, alive, staring up at the mask with an expression that has shifted into something he cannot name from this distance and this altitude. He does not try to name it. He straightens. The tactical situation has not waited for him. It never does. Imperial garrison forces will have registered the engagement's end on sensors within 60 seconds. Piet is in orbit aboard the Executor, watching a comm panel that is about to show him something he will not understand. And on Coruscant, Palpatine is alive and powerful in maintaining his passive Force surveillance of the creature he built. And he will feel the shift, the wrong texture of this moment, the absence of the capture, the change in emotional register, within the hour, maybe sooner. Vader should be standing on this gantry ordering pursuit ships to the shaft. Vader should be issuing demands through the comm. Vader should be executing the 17 precise and terrible steps that 22 years of operational experience in this body knows come next. Anakin turns and walks away. He moves through Cloud City's corridors at the controlled speed of a man who designed this kind of problem before he inherited it. Garrison troops flatten against the walls as he passes. None of them speak. They have been trained to read Vader's body language the way prey animals read weather. Not consciously, not with words, but with the bone-deep instinct to become as small as possible when the pressure in a room changes. He uses that. He does not stop. The war room runs while his legs run the corridor. One body. A broken body built as a cage. You have an hour before he starts asking questions you cannot answer. You know this place. Every exit, every shift rotation, every surveillance gap. You know what happens if you do nothing. Luke hangs on that structure until the Falcon pulls him up. Leia finds him. The Falcon runs. That is the good outcome. Do not touch the good outcome. Find Luke, take Luke, then start the actual war. He turns left at the juncture where the carbonite processing level meets the secondary docking ring, a turn that no current Imperial garrison map marks as useful, because the current map was built from Cloud City's public infrastructure data, and does not account for a maintenance wing that Lando Calrissian quietly decommissioned 3 years ago, and never officially sealed. Anakin knows about the wing because, in another life, he reviewed the Imperial inspection report for this facility and noticed the discrepancy. He flagged it in the margin as a security vulnerability. The note was never actioned. The Empire is vast, and the margins of inspection reports are where good intelligence goes to be ignored. Sometimes the universe returns favors. The secondary docking bay sits on emergency lighting, empty and unhurried. The Lambda-class shuttle at the far end has not been touched because no one thought to secure a bay that Vader would theoretically have no reason to use when he already commands an entire Star Destroyer in orbit. The fuel cells read full. The crew roster shows absent, shift rotation, a detail from a garrison schedule Anakin reviewed 6 months ago as a routine operational audit that the suit's architecture has simply never let him forget. He boards alone, the pilot's seat. He does not rush the pre-flight. Rushing pre-flight is how people die, and he has already managed that once this week. Whatever measure of the word applies. He reaches out into the Force. Not far, downward, through the decks of Cloud City, through the shaft, to the structure below the gantry where Luke Skywalker is still holding on, with one functioning hand and the stubbornness of a boy raised on a desert planet where stubbornness is the primary survival mechanism. Luke's Force presence is bright and ragged and unmistakably alive. And then, there, stretching outward from Luke, reaching through the Force toward a frequency Anakin recognizes without having to reach for it. Warm, certain, the signature of someone who has already answered this call before without knowing what it was. Leia. Good. The Falcon will come, his daughter will come. Anakin settles into the seat. The hull of the shuttle muffles the Bespin wind to something distant. The corridor outside is still. The suit maintains him with its usual dispassionate efficiency, tracking 17 biometric indicators simultaneously, finding all of them within survivable parameters, caring about none of them. The respirator breathes. He begins to calculate. He runs the simulation 3 times before he acts. This is how he survived the Clone Wars. Not bravado, not instinct, not the Force used as a shortcut through the effort of thinking. 3 full passes, every variable counted, every second-order consequence mapped to its conclusion. The problem: Luke Skywalker is hanging from a weather-vane structure on Cloud City's underside. Injured. One hand. He is already reaching through the Force toward his sister, which means the Millennium Falcon will receive that signal and reverse course. The Falcon carries Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Leia Organa. Given the last known Falcon position relative to Cloud City's undercarriage, accounting for Leia's response time once she feels her brother through the Force, factoring in the airspace Luke has to fall through before the Falcon can reach him, 10 minutes, perhaps 12. Option A, intercept the Falcon directly, board it, take Luke. He kills that option before it finishes forming. Han Solo does not respond well to being boarded. Leia Organa does not respond well to anything she has correctly identified as a threat, and between the two of them, they will manufacture a firefight before he can establish that this is not what it looks like. Luke, injured and in shock, with no framework for what just happened on that gantry, will choose his found family over a father he has known for 4 minutes. Anakin does not blame him. He would make the same choice. Option B, reach Luke through the Force before the Falcon arrives, pull him up directly into the shuttle. The distance is the problem. The suit is always the problem. The Force moves through it the way light moves through a red filter, present but narrowed, the full spectrum reduced to the frequencies Palpatine's architecture permits. At range, executing a maneuver that requires catching a wounded man in a 3-dimensional open shaft, the suit's limitation is not acceptable risk. Option C. Let the Falcon retrieve Luke, track them into hyperspace, intercept after the jump, where there is nowhere to run and no one else to put between himself and his son. He runs it a 3rd time. Option C protects the most people. It keeps the fight off the Falcon. It keeps Leia out of range of anything that might go wrong. It keeps his daughter alive. He becomes aware, somewhere below the calculation, that he has been thinking about Leia as his daughter for the past 90 seconds, and that it is already the most complicated thing he has felt since he woke up in this body, which is a remarkable statement given the last 20 minutes. The respirator covers everything. It always does. Option C, the comm activates for the 4th time. He lets the first 3 calls from the executor run to silence, a minor act of mercy toward Admiral Piet, who does not deserve what would happen to him if Anakin answered while still reconstructing himself from shock. By the 4th call, he is ready. He keys the channel. Secure all communications, Vader's cadence. Measured, cold, the precise spacing that 19 years of performance has made automatic. I am conducting a special operation. No transmissions are to leave this system without my personal authorization. This order applies to all channels, all personnel, all frequencies. He can hear, in the background of the open channel, the specific quality of a crew performing the complex act of following an order they do not understand, without letting the confusion become audible. It is a sound he knows well. He produced it in thousands of men across 2 decades. Piet's voice: understood, Lord Vader. All communications secured. Do not contact me again until I initiate. He closes the channel, 40 minutes, perhaps a little more, before someone on that bridge decides that the pressure building outweighs the cost of questioning the order. Every minute of that window is a resource. He spends none of them standing still. The tractor beam arrays on the executor are the next problem, and the most delicate one. He knows the ship, 3 years commanding from her bridge, walking her corridors at all hours, learning every system the way a pilot learns an aircraft, not from documentation, but from the specific way she responds under pressure, the places where she is strong and the places where she compensates. The tractor beam control relays are distributed across 3 clusters along the ventral hull. Primary targeting in Cluster 1, power distribution through 2, and 3. The targeting array in Cluster 1 runs a self-diagnostic every 40 minutes. If that diagnostic were to encounter an unexpected harmonic in the targeting sensors, not a failure, not a shutdown, just a calibration drift small enough to register as routine maintenance, the array would cycle offline while the system corrected itself. 7 minutes, approximately. Enough. He closes his eyes. He reaches, not the crushing grip, not the reach that builds from anger and treats everything it touches as something to be controlled. He finds the executor's targeting array through the Force, the way water finds a crack in stone, not forcing. Following, he traces along the relay architecture until he finds the calibration input for the targeting sensor cluster. A contact point no larger than a data node in an otherwise enormous system, he introduces a variance. 3%, subtle enough to look like equipment drift, significant enough to matter. He withdraws. From the executor's bridge, it registers as a maintenance flag. From the Falcon's perspective, it will register as luck. The Falcon comes 8 minutes later. He feels it before the shuttle's external sensors pick it up. The ship's presence in the Force, which is an odd thing to say about a machine, but which anyone who has ever flown something they loved will understand. The Falcon carries 4 presences he recognizes. Han Solo, whose relationship with the Force is roughly equivalent to the relationship of a man who refuses to acknowledge he is standing in a river, while insisting he is perfectly dry. Chewbacca, whose Force presence is uncomplicated and very large, the particular brightness of a being who has never once tried to be anything other than exactly what he is. R2-D2, who registers as a brief, sharp note that does not map onto any established taxonomy of Force sensitivity, and that Anakin has never found a satisfactory explanation for despite years of trying. And Leia. He finds her the way a body finds a wound in the dark, without searching, just suddenly unavoidably aware. Her Force signature is controlled and precise, the signature of someone who has been using the Force her entire life without the language to name it, which means she has built the instincts without the framework, and arrived at a precision that should be impossible from someone untrained. It is her mother's clarity married to something else, something Anakin recognizes in the same involuntary way you recognize your own handwriting. He stops the thought before it completes. There is a calibration to maintain, and thinking about what Leia inherited from him is not compatible with that calibration right now. The Falcon finds Luke on the weather vane structure. Anakin follows this through the Force. The Falcon's descent, the retrieval, the moment Luke's presence shifts from isolated and ragged to held. He is aboard. He is alive. The Falcon accelerates. The tractor beam targeting array on the executor cycles into its diagnostic. The Falcon clears Cloud City's upper atmosphere. The array comes back online 3 seconds after the Falcon's hyperdrive calculates its jump coordinates. 3 seconds is not enough. The Falcon stretches and vanishes. A ripple in the Force like a stone into still water, and then the particular quality of absence that only hyperspace creates. Anakin releases a breath he has not been aware of holding. They are out. Leia is out. He holds that for 4 seconds. Then he moves. The shuttle lifts cleanly, no one in the secondary bay to question the departure. The exit logged automatically under Vader's operational clearance. The course filed under a category that traffic control has been trained not to examine. He takes her straight through Cloud City's upper traffic lanes and into open sky. The amber cloud layers thinning around the shuttle's hull as altitude increases. The executor fills the forward viewport as he clears the atmosphere. 2 kilometers of Imperial war machine, hull lit by Bespin's cloud glow, every gun pointed outward at a galaxy that does not yet know what has changed. Piet will be standing at his comm panel constructing, with whatever courage and creativity the man possesses, a reason not to escalate the silence to Coruscant. Anakin gives him another hour before someone braver or more ambitious makes the decision for him. He points the shuttle's nose away from the executor and begins the hyperspace calculation. Tracking through the Force is not like tracking through sensors. It gives no coordinates. It gives direction, pull, the relative sense of proximity that a trained mind learns to translate into navigational data through practice. He knows Luke's Force signature with the specificity of someone who helped shape it, the bright, stubborn frequency of it, the particular warmth that is entirely Padmé's, the specific quality of determination that Anakin recognizes, without any comfort whatsoever, as entirely his own. He closes his eyes. He finds the thread. He calculates 3 possible egress vectors from Bespin, given the Falcon's heading at jump, and the Rebel resupply corridors he spent 18 months trying to map. One of those vectors runs toward a rendezvous point he knows because he spent 6 weeks using it as a kill box. The Falcon will not stay in hyperspace once Luke's condition is assessed. A severed hand requires Bacta, and the nearest rebel medical resource on that corridor is a position he can reach first. If he moves now, he enters the heading into the navicomputer. The ship jumps. Hyperspace is blue-white and absolute. In the 3-second transition from Bespin's amber atmosphere to the streaked geometry of faster-than-light travel, Anakin permits himself one thing. He thinks about his children, both of them. Luke, injured and alive and carrying the impossible weight of what happened on that gantry. The confession delivered by a machine that wore his father's voice without his father's soul. And then 2 minutes later, the apology that followed it from the floor. Anakin cannot build a framework for Luke around that sequence of events. He can only be present for whatever comes next. And Leia, a woman who has never been told, a woman who has survived everything, and does not yet know why she is this precise, this controlled, this relentlessly capable in the face of everything the galaxy has thrown at her, a woman who is going to have questions that Anakin does not know how to answer except honestly, which is the only currency he has left. Neither of them owes him anything. He understands this with the flat clarity of someone who does not allow himself comfortable fictions. The work ahead is not a transaction. There is no mechanism by which the account balances. There is only showing up for what comes next, and then the day after that, and the day after that. He finds Luke's force presence ahead of him, moving through hyperspace on the corridor he predicted. Still there, still alive, moving toward whatever the rebellion calls safety this week. When Luke drops out of hyperspace, Anakin will be waiting. The Falcon drops out of hyperspace at the rendezvous coordinates 4 minutes after Anakin does. He watches through the Force as the argument aboard her happens. Han Solo, predictably, is against everything about this. Chewbacca's position is more nuanced and considerably louder. Leia says something Anakin cannot hear, but which, from the specific texture of her Force presence, amounts to, "This is Luke's decision." Luke crosses to the shuttle alone, his left hand wrapped around his right forearm, the Falcon holding position at a distance that keeps its guns in range of the shuttle the entire time. Anakin does not move from the pilot's seat as the boarding ramp cycles. He hears the footsteps in the corridor. He waits. Luke stops in the hatchway of the cockpit. He looks at the back of the black helmet for a moment. "You said you were sorry." "I was." Vader doesn't apologize. No, he doesn't. A long moment. Then Luke steps forward and takes the co-pilot's seat and turns to face the mask directly. "So tell me what you are." Anakin reaches up and disengages the cockpit's inner hatch. It slides closed. He turns to his son. He closes the door. He doesn't begin with the mechanics. He begins with Padmé. Not her death, her life. He gives Luke that first. The way she argued, the particular quality of her intelligence, the way she faced a crisis with the precise calm of someone who had learned very young that fear was a resource she could not afford to spend. He gives Luke the shape of her so that everything that follows has something real to stand on. Luke is completely still, listening. Her name was Padmé Amidala. She was a senator when I knew her. She had been a queen before that, at 14, which sounds impossible until you understand that the people who elected her knew exactly what they were doing. She was the most capable person I have ever met, and I loved her in a way I did not know how to carry, which means I carried it badly, and eventually I dropped it, and it broke everything. Luke's expression does not move. His eyes do. "She was my mother," he says. Not a question. Yes. The word sits in the recycled air of the cockpit. Luke turns to the forward viewport, to hyperspace, to nothing, to the specific middle distance people look at when they are reorganizing a very large amount of information at once. "Obi-Wan told me she died," Luke says. "He didn't tell me her name. He was not wrong to. He made the best choices available to him given the enemy he was hiding you from. I am not criticizing him. But she deserved to be named." Anakin says, "She deserved more than a story about a dying woman whose children never knew she existed. She deserved better than what I gave her. Both of those things are true, simultaneously." He tells Luke the fall, not the version Palpatine constructed, not the version shaped by Obi-Wan's grief into something more manageable in the retelling. The actual sequence, fear, grief, pride so old and structural it had become load-bearing, the visions that came every night without exception, Padmé dying, the same image on a loop, and the specific madness of a man who had already watched his mother die of neglect and will do anything to prevent a repetition. Anything. He told Palpatine he would do anything. And Palpatine, who had been building toward that single word for the better part of a decade, opened the door. He told me the dark side could preserve life, prevent death. I believed him because I needed to believe something, and needing something badly enough is the most reliable method I know for stopping the machinery of clear thought. Did it work? Did he actually know how? No. She died anyway. She died on a table in a medical facility on Coruscant, 2 days after Mustafar, and I was already sealed in the suit. The first thing Palpatine told me when I woke up was that I had killed her. With my hands, with my anger. I believed that for 22 years. That is what he does. Luke's jaw tightens. And did you kill her? I hurt her. On Mustafar before the end, I force-choked her because I was so far gone I had decided she'd betrayed me. Whether that's what killed her, or whether the medical droids couldn't save her from what she had already lost, whether grief or the will to survive, or something I can't account for from this distance, I don't know. I will never know. Not because it doesn't matter, because flatness is the only way to say it without it collapsing into something self-serving. I am not telling you this so you'll understand me. I'm telling you so you have the complete picture of what we are facing. The Leia part is harder. Not logistically, one sentence stated clearly, you have a twin sister. Her name is Leia. You already know her. The difficulty is watching Luke's face in the moment the sentence lands. He sees the exact instant of restructuring. Everything Luke thought he understood about himself, the isolation of it, the singular quality of being an orphan who had found one piece of family at the end of a gantry over nothing, reorganizes itself around the new axis. His eyes change. Not with grief, with something that looks almost like recognition. As if a door he didn't know was closed has just opened onto a room he has always been able to feel from the other side. Leia, Luke says, quietly. She's yes, she doesn't know. No, and she cannot learn it from Palpatine. He would use it. He does not know about her yet. That information stayed sealed. Bail Organa made sure of that. If it reaches Palpatine before we reach him, she becomes leverage. That cannot happen. And you think we can actually reach Palpatine? I know we can. I know where he is, how his protection is layered, what his contingencies look like, and what he doesn't know yet. What doesn't he know? That I'm already inside. He lays out the future quickly and without theater. Not prophecy. He presents it as source intelligence from an operative who attended every planning session because he was the primary instrument of execution. The Death Star under construction in the Endor system, the trap assembled for the Rebellion's capital fleet, the 1-year window before the second moon of Endor becomes a killing ground for every ship the Alliance has left. Luke listens with the focused stillness of someone who has learned that sometimes listening is the only effective action remaining. I am not asking you to forgive me, Anakin says, when the briefing ends. I want to be exact about that. This conversation is not a transaction. You owe me nothing. The accounting of what I owe you and Leia runs longer than I have time to work through right now. What I am asking for is 1 year. Work with me. Let me dismantle what I built, using the knowledge I have of how I built it. Without you on that Death Star, without you alone in Palpatine's throne room, with a fraction of the casualties, he takes the silence and does something with it, and Anakin lets him, because his son processes in silence and has done so since birth, and pressing him now would accomplish nothing beyond confirming that Anakin had learned nothing useful in 22 years. After nearly a full minute, Luke asks his question, "Did you love her, Mom? Did you actually love her, or was it something else?" Anakin is quiet for a moment, more than I can say, more than I understood how to hold. That's why I broke everything. Luke looks down at the wound where his right hand was, then back up at the mask. He does not say he forgives Anakin. He says something better. Tell me the plan. The suit chooses this moment to register its objections formally. The HUD's diagnostic warnings have been building since the tractor beam work on Bespin, yellow cautions accumulating through the Piet performance, the force trance, the confession itself, each one adding to a load the suit was never designed to carry with anything resembling grace. 2 thresholds cross to red simultaneously. He does not explain this to Luke. He simply says, "I need a few minutes. Don't be alarmed." Don't be alarmed, Anakin says. Then he closes his eyes and drops inward. The force trance is not unconsciousness. It is the precise opposite. Awareness fully concentrated, every external direction stripped away. The force connection at maximum sensitivity turned entirely inward to do what the suit manages only inadequately. sustain the biological systems underneath the machinery, quiet the nerve interface feedback, allow his actual lungs to lead rather than follow. He has practiced this in small fragments for years. He has never done it this deep with someone else present. The first thing he becomes aware of, from inside the trance, is Luke. Luke has gone completely still. Through the Force, warm and clear and unobstructed in this state in ways the suit normally prohibits, Anakin feels his son's presence, not reaching, not probing, simply there. The specific quality of someone sitting with another person in the dark, because the dark is less complete that way. The suit's warnings step back from red to yellow, then to green. The respirator breathes. He comes back. Luke has not moved. What was that? His voice carries the careful quality of someone who has just witnessed something they cannot categorize and are choosing not to pretend otherwise. The Force can maintain the body when the machinery fails. It's a skill, not a gift. Obi-Wan could have taught you this. He ran out of time, Luke says. Yes, he did. The shuttle moves through hyperspace. Luke turns toward the viewport and back. The movement of someone arriving at a decision. Leia is going to want to know, he says. I know. About her, about you, about Mom. She is going to want the full version, not a summary. I know. Luke pauses. Something settles in his expression, a door closing on one question, another opening. We need Ahsoka. Anakin looks at his son for a long moment. He does not ask how Luke knows that name. He does not ask what the Force has already shown him in the quiet of the trance, or what part of the plan he has already begun working through while Anakin was too far inward to notice. I know, Anakin says. I know where she is. The immediate crisis ends somewhere in the third hour of transit, and what replaces it is something Anakin has almost no framework for. Quiet. Not silence. The respirator ensures silence is never an option. But quiet. The particular quality of a situation that does not require action in the next 30 seconds for the first time since he woke up in the suit. The shuttle hums. Hyperspace streams past the forward viewport in long blue-white geometry. Luke sits in the co-pilot's seat with his injured arm resting in his lap and does not speak. And Anakin does not speak, and for a long stretch they both exist in the same space without either of them requiring anything from the other. He becomes aware, gradually, that Luke is watching him, not his face. The helmet offers nothing to read, and Luke has already understood this. He is watching the suit, the small mechanical adjustments the servos make when Anakin shifts his weight, the pattern of the respirator, its rhythm as consistent as a clock and as involuntary, the way the gloved hands rest on the arms of the pilot's chair, completely still, as if stillness is something that requires deliberate maintenance rather than the natural state of a body at rest. He is working something out. Does it hurt? Luke asks. Careful. The voice of someone who has decided not to pretend he hasn't been thinking about this for the past hour. Anakin considers the question in the specific way he considers anything that deserves an honest answer, rather than a convenient one. Every second. But I spent 19 years not caring, so now I do. It's a fair trade. Luke looks at the mask for a moment. He does not offer sympathy, which Anakin appreciates. He simply nods, the nod of someone placing new information accurately rather than decorating it. The new course heading goes into the navicomputer in the third hour after Anakin has run the options and confirmed there are no better ones. Where are we going? Luke watches the coordinates resolve. Malachor. What's on Malachor? Ahsoka Tano. Anakin pauses. Probably. I have to confirm it, which requires a different kind of navigation than the navicomputer can manage. He closes his eyes. Reaching through hyperspace is not like reaching through open space. Hyperspace is a layer of reality that does not operate by the same physics as the galaxy's visible face. The Force is present in it, but attenuated the way sound carries strangely in very deep water. Most Force-sensitive beings can feel presences in hyperspace vaguely. A general warmth in a direction, an impression of proximity. What Anakin is attempting requires considerably more precision than that, and it requires explaining because Luke is sitting here, and Luke needs to learn this, and there is no better time than a long transit across dead space. Everyone who touches the Force leaves a signature, like a fingerprint or a voice. Once you know someone's signature, you can find them anywhere in the galaxy. It takes patience. It takes silence. It takes turning off everything inside you except the listening. He reaches outward, past the gravity shadow of Bespin somewhere behind them, past the lane geometry of hyperspace that has no true direction and must be navigated by feel rather than bearing. Past Imperial patrol corridors he knows because he designed their coverage. past rebel listening posts he spent years trying to locate. He looks for a specific frequency. Your sister's signature sounds like sunlight on water. He says it without ceremony, the way he states any fact he is still learning to carry. Leia, I've only just found it. I don't have better language for it yet. A pause. The reaching continues. Deeper, further through more layers of static than most beings would attempt. Ahsoka sounds like the Force itself, laughing. I'd know it through a planet of static. Alive. Still. Meditating. The specific quality of someone who has been sitting with a very large grief for a very long time and has arrived through discipline rather than resolution at something that functions as peace. He opens his eyes. She's there. Luke is watching him with the expression he produces when the Force does something he doesn't have a category for yet. Not skeptical, not overwhelmed. Simply open, storing it. How long since you felt her? He asks. 3 years ago from this point in time. Malachor, the first visit. A beat. She was on the other end of a lightsaber. Mine. Luke absorbs this, and she survived. Barely. Through no virtue of mine. The transit continues. Luke has questions he has been holding since before the Falcon, before the shuttle, perhaps since before Bespin. The compressed backlog of someone who has been operating on incomplete information his entire life and has just received a significant delivery. Now, with nothing immediately requiring action, they come. About the Clone Wars. About what Anakin was before the suit made questions about the past feel like archaeology. Anakin handles this with care. There is a version of this conversation that produces a mythology, a story about a hero, a general, the great Anakin Skywalker of the Republic, and he will not tell that version. Luke does not need a myth. He needs the truth, which is considerably more useful and less comfortable. The Clone Wars lasted 3 years, Anakin says. We fought across 100 systems at once, with an army none of us had asked for, led by generals who had spent their lives as peacekeepers and had approximately 3 months to become something different. We made mistakes. We lost men who trusted us. We made decisions in the field that the history records left out because the history records were written by the side that won. Those victories don't cancel the ledger. They're just a separate column, and Ahsoka was part of that, Luke says, from the beginning. She was 16 when she walked into my life and told me she was my Padawan. I didn't want a student. I thought I wasn't ready. I thought she was too young, too loud, too reckless. A shorter pause. Too much like me. Turns out that was exactly right. She was too much like me, which also meant she was too good for me. She was better than her training from her first day. What happened to her? The Order failed her. She was accused of something she didn't do, and the Council moved against her before the truth had time to surface. And I didn't fight hard enough for her when it mattered. She left. Not because she was pushed out, because she had the integrity to name what had happened to her, and most of us were too compromised to do the same. He does not frame this as self-flagellation. He states it as the record. She went her own way. Built something without the Order structure, became better for it, if I'm reading the last 3 years correctly. And then Malachor, Luke says. And then Malachor. The silence holds for a moment. She survived you, Luke says. The same flat cataloging register he has used since the shuttle. Not accusation, simply accurate. She survived me. That's the hardest thing anyone in the galaxy has ever managed to do. And she did it twice. Malachor drops out of the dark of hyperspace like something that has been expecting them. The shuttle crosses the system boundary, and the planet fills the forward viewport, and it is immediately, viscerally wrong in a way that operates beneath conscious analysis. Black surface, shattered geography, the remnant topography of a superweapon that petrified an entire battlefield 10,000 years ago, and left the dead standing in their final postures, neither buried nor mourned. Preserved in the precise configuration of the moment, everything ended. Luke goes very still. Anakin watches his son look at Malachor and understands without needing to ask what he is feeling. Every Force-sensitive being who has ever looked at this planet from orbit feels some version of it. The wound is not metaphorical. It exists in the living Force as a structural fact, a scar that has never been given the conditions it would need to close. What happened here? Luke's voice is low. A war ended. Both sides lost. Luke turns from the viewport, and she's here. In this, she would be, Anakin says. The certainty comes from below the level of tactics. It's the kind of place you go when you need to think about loss without anyone making you perform the grief. No witnesses, no obligations, just the fact of what happened, and as much time as you need to sit with it. Luke is quiet for a moment. You've been to places like that. I lived in one for 22 years. The geography changes, the principle doesn't. He plots the descent trajectory for the outer ruins. The flat stone shelf at the edge of the Sith Temple's courtyard, close enough that Ahsoka will feel the approach with time to prepare. Far enough from the main structure to avoid the worst of the dark side resonance built into the masonry over millennia. He owes her the warning. It will not neutralize what she intends to do when they land, but it is the decent minimum. He tells Luke the essential tactical facts on the way down. No fulcrum frequencies. The Empire monitors those channels and has since the Rebellion's formation. No Imperial database contact without triggering Palpatine's surveillance. Ahsoka does not know he is coming. The last time she felt a Vader pattern force signature approaching this planet, she lost the duel and escaped only because the circumstances around her were more chaotic than Vader's ability to manage. When we land, Anakin says, "I approach first." Alone, Luke looks at him. Why? Because she is going to try to kill me, and I would rather not make her explain that to you afterward. Luke opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. Is that a reasonable prediction? Yes. The shuttle enters final approach. Below them, Malakor's surface resolves into specific detail. The carved stone channels of the temple's outer ring, the flat expanses of petrified ground, the ancient combatants still frozen in postures of attack and defense that have not moved in 10,000 years. Nothing moves on this world except the wind. The landing struts extend, the shuttle settles onto the stone shelf, with the particular sound of weight meeting something that was not waiting for it. The boarding ramp descends. Cold air enters the cabin. Not the processed cold of a controlled environment, the real cold of a dead world. Dry and mineral, carrying the smell of stone that has not been disturbed in centuries. The wind here has nothing in common with Bespin. Bespin's wind was industrial, the movement of a city that processed atmosphere for commerce. This wind moves across the ruins the way water moves across the bottom of a very old sea. Patient, directionless, present long before anything living arrived and planning to remain long after. Anakin stands at the top of the ramp. He reaches outward. She is close. Very close, and her force signature, which carried the deep meditative stillness of someone at genuine rest only minutes ago, has shifted, gone quiet in a different way. The controlled, specific silence of a warrior who has identified something approaching and has made every relevant decision before the approach is complete. She is ready for him. The respirator breathes. "Stay in the shuttle," he tells Luke. He does not look back. He walks down the ramp alone. She felt the approach an hour before the shuttle appeared above Malakor's cloud layer. One force signature, Vader pattern. The dark side architecture of it unmistakable, the specific weight she has spent 3 years on this dead world half expecting to feel, descending toward her from the sky. Ahsoka's first thought is flat and simple. He found me. Her second thought displaces the first before it can become anything else. Assessment, positioning, strategy. She does not run. She moves to the outer courtyard of the Sith Temple, the high ground she mapped on her first day and has kept available ever since. And she takes her position among the ruins with 3 clear sight lines and 4 retreat routes. And she holds her sabers unlit in both hands, and she waits. Her white robes are worn from the months on Malachor, stained at the hem with the red dust of the lower rock. The kyber crystals in her sabers, she bled herself, not dark side corruption, but something she has never found a satisfactory word for. A third way. She has been living in the third way for years now. The shuttle descends through the dead atmosphere, lands on the stone shelf at the courtyard's edge. The boarding ramp extends. One figure in black armor walks down it, alone. She watches the walk, and something in the watching produces the first moment of genuine uncertainty she has permitted herself since she sensed the approach. Because that is not Vader's walk. Vader's walk was always a performance, the deliberate metronomic procession of something that wanted you afraid before it arrived. He walked like authority rendered physical, like a verdict that had already been read. This is different. This is a man walking towards something he is afraid of, covering it with precision because precision is what he has instead of comfort. He stops 30 meters from where she stands. He does not draw his saber. He does not speak. The wind moves across the ruins between them. Dead stone. Cold air that smells of centuries of nothing. "Whatever you're planning, it won't work here," she says. Her voice carries the 30 meters without difficulty. Steady, not a tremble anywhere in it. "I've made my peace with this fight." He opens both hands, turns them outward and upward, the gesture of someone carrying nothing concealed, in the most complete sense of that word. Then he reaches up, both mechanical hands, and he removes the helmet. The respirator breathes. The wind moves across the ruins. Under the helmet is the face of Anakin Skywalker, not the face she last saw across the burning courtyard on Mandalore. That face had been healthy, young, and carefully showing nothing, and she had been counting escape routes and not allowing herself to look at it too directly, because looking at it directly would have cost her something she needed in order to keep moving. This face is what Mustafar left, pale, scarred at the jaw and along the left temple where the lava reached what the duel didn't finish. And the eyes? She processes the eyes separately, because they matter separately. Not yellow, not the Sith gold she has been bracing to see in every hologram of Vader's face for 3 years. Blue, Skywalker blue, present and impossible, wet at the outer corners with something the suit's internal systems are actively fighting to suppress. She does not lower her sabers. The face isn't the proof, he says. His real voice, below the modulator, below 19 years of machinery, hoarse from damage and disuse, but recognizable in the way certain things are recognizable regardless of what time does to them. Anyone with surgery could have this face. I know that. He looks across the 30 meters between them and finds, in her expression, the specific thing he is searching for. The trained stillness of Ahsoka Tano holding something desperately back. The way she has held things back her entire life, when she has decided the cost of feeling them now, is more than the situation can afford. Do you want the proof, or do you want the password? The question finds her unprepared. She spent an hour preparing for a death match, and is not prepared for this question. Password, she says. He tells her a name. A small name. A specific, private, completely unverifiable from outside thing that passed between them on their second mission together, when she was 16 years old and absolutely terrified, and covering it with the kind of bravado that only works on someone willing to play along. He had leaned close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, which was the thing about Anakin Skywalker that the holograms never captured, that he ran warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. And he had said something in her montrals, something that was simultaneously the least serious and most precisely calibrated thing anyone had ever said to her, and she had laughed until she couldn't breathe, which was the only thing that was going to get her functional again, and he had known that. He says it now, quietly, without theater. The silence after it is complete. Ahsoka Tano deactivates both sabers. She does not move. She stands in the exact position she has occupied since she took her ground, the way a person stands when the structural certainty beneath them has shifted and they are reassessing their relationship with the floor. Anakin, not a question, the specific quality of stating something that has reorganized everything around it. Hey, Snips, he says. She sits down on the ruins. Not a collapse. Ahsoka Tano does not collapse. She makes a decision that her legs can stop working for a specific and bounded period of time. And she executes the decision with the same precision she executes everything. And she sits on the carved stone of a dead world and allows herself for approximately 90 seconds to be 23 years of grief at once. He does not speak, he does not approach. He lowers himself to the ruins across from her, the suit managing the movement in its graceless mechanical way, and he sits without his helmet in the cold wind and he waits. He has learned to wait. It cost him everything to learn it, but he knows it now. When she is ready, she looks up. Tell me, she says. He tells her what he told Luke, compressed and tactical, the essential architecture without unnecessary weight. He watches her face move through the full catalog while he speaks. Disbelief first, then internal verification as she reaches through the Force and finds the texture of him beneath 23 years of damage, the specific frequency of her teacher layered under everything the suit and the dark side built on top of it. Then grief at the cost of those years, then the particular expression of someone deciding whether to trust the evidence in their hands or the noise in their chest, and concluding, in the way Ahsoka Tano always concludes things, that the two are not in conflict. She asks sharper questions than Luke. She was trained by Anakin and improved on what she was given. She finds every place where the story thins, every point where fabrication would be possible, and she tests each one until it holds or it doesn't. It holds. The day you left the Order, she says finally, level, precise. What did I do when I found out? You went to the southern market on Coruscant and bought a piece of fried nerf on a stick. Ate the whole thing in the market square. When Rex asked you why, you said the answer to every existential crisis is street food. She stares at him. Rex told me, Anakin says. 3 years later, Mandalore, Said you were stress-eating ration bars and it reminded him. Said you would have told me the same thing if I'd been there to say it. The pause that follows is the longest that has existed in this story. The dead wind moves between them across stone that was carved before the Republic was founded. Somewhere above and behind them, inside the shuttle, Luke is watching through the forward viewport and arriving at conclusions. When do we start? Ahsoka says. She discovers Luke is watching exactly 13 minutes later because Luke runs out of patience at the 13-minute mark and comes down the ramp. He stops 10 meters from where she is standing. Tall, slightly taller than she expected, though she has no particular basis for an expectation. He has his father's coloring and something else she can't immediately source, a quality of attention that is not Anakin's, that sits more quietly. He is looking at her with the particular focus of someone who has been hearing about a person at a distance for long enough that the actual meeting requires an adjustment period. Ahsoka looks at him. The eyes, the line of the jaw, the stump of the right arm wrapped at the wrist. She looks at Anakin. You took his hand off. Vader did. You were Vader. I'm trying to make it complicated. Don't. Not unkind, precise, which is different. It's not complicated. You took his hand off and now you're going to help him get better. That's the story. We make it more complicated when we have time. She crosses to Luke. She has to angle her chin upward slightly to meet his eyes, and she does it with the complete lack of self-consciousness of someone who has never once made any decision based on geometry. 3 seconds of focused attention. The professional inventory she has taken of every person she has needed to quickly trust or quickly fight. In the last 2 decades, your father, she says, was the greatest and worst Jedi Master in the history of the Order. Luke waits. I'm Ahsoka. I'll try not to let his failures be yours. Luke blinks. Okay, behind them both, on the ruins of a Sith temple on a world that has been dead longer than the Republic was alive, Anakin Skywalker watches his Padawan meet his son. He does not speak, because there is nothing he could say that the moment is not already saying without him. The cache is carved into the lower level of the Sith temple, a chamber that was not always a chamber, shaped over months with the patient, deliberate work of someone who had been told by the Force to prepare and had decided to take the instruction at its full value. Ahsoka lights the power cells as they enter, basic illumination salvaged from an Imperial outpost she does not name. The workbench along the far wall is organized with a precision that is entirely her own. Tools grouped by function, components cataloged by type, a system that would be obvious to anyone trained the same way she was trained. Crates of salvage line the walls. Several items Anakin recognizes from Imperial Quartermaster inventories. Several he does not recognize and files for later. He does a full circuit of the room without speaking, which she allows. He identifies, in order, a Mandalorian-grade conductive mesh roll large enough for the chest plate and upper arms, 2 Beskar plating fragments from what was probably a piece of Mandalorian armor that saw better days, a compact respiratory module originally designed for vacuum condition emergency kits, and a set of precision micro-tools in a case that looks like it came from a Republic medical facility before the Empire had a chance to repaint it. He stops at the workbench. How long have you been gathering this? Since I got here, months mostly. Some of it I brought. You knew you'd need it. I didn't know anything. I kept preparing because the Force kept telling me to have things ready. A pause. She looks around the space with the expression of someone reassessing a long project. I assume this is what it was for. Anakin does not comment on the scale of what the Force asked her to do, or on the fact that she did it without a reason she could name. He has spent enough time on the wrong side of Force guidance to have a precise appreciation for what it costs to follow the right side. He pulls the micro-tools toward him. Let's start with the kill switches. The kill switch work requires 3 of them. Anakin sits in the center of the chamber while Ahsoka dismantles the chest plate access panel with the focus of someone diffusing something. He talks her through it. The 3 primary relay nodes first, then the 2 secondary redundancies, then the emergency shutdown buried close to the respiratory module where the schematics show only a standard maintenance port. He can feel the relays as much as he can describe them. Small wrongnesses in the suit's electrical signature, places where the current flows through channels that don't match the declared architecture. Palpatine built them in the original design sessions. Anakin was present for those sessions. Anakin signed the schematics. Luke's role is to read the Force around the chest plate as Ahsoka works. Not to detect danger precisely, not yet, but to feel for any sympathetic activation, any protocol that might interpret the removal as an attack on the system and respond accordingly. He sits cross-legged to Ahsoka's left, eyes half closed, one hand resting open near the work without touching it. "Anything?" Ahsoka asks without looking up from the relay she is tracing. "Nothing, it's quiet. Keep watching." The first relay comes free in Ahsoka's hands, a component small enough to sit in her palm, anonymous-looking, the kind of thing you would walk past in an engineering bay without registering as the difference between Vader's life and Palpatine's control of it. She sets it on the workbench without ceremony, finds the second. "I was angry," she says, her voice level and her eyes on the wiring. "When I found out you had fallen, not during Order 66, I didn't have the full picture yet. After, when the pieces fit together." Anakin does not tell her she doesn't have to say it. She would not appreciate the suggestion, not at you specifically, at the fact that there was nothing left to be angry at. Vader was what remained. And I couldn't be angry at Vader because Vader wasn't you, and you were gone. "I wasn't gone," Anakin says. "I was in there. I was always in there." The second relay separates from the chassis. She places it beside the first. "I know that now." Her voice does not change register, does not soften or harden. "I need you to understand that knowing it now doesn't change what it was like not knowing it for 23 years. "I understand." "Good." She finds the third relay, the deepest one, the one close to the respiratory module where the access is narrow and the work requires both patience and extremely small hands. "Because I'm not finished being angry, I'm going to save the galaxy with you, and I'm still going to be angry. That's more than fair." The third relay comes free. She lines it up beside the other two on the workbench. 3 small components, 23 years of Palpatine's contingency. She looks at them for one moment, then sweeps them off the bench into a waste container without further consideration. Luke, who has been watching all of this with the careful attention of someone absorbing more than the instructions, says nothing. The insulation work takes 4 hours and is not beautiful. The Mandalorian mesh goes over the chest plate and upper arms, cut and shaped and secured with the Beskar fragments as anchor points, creating a layered barrier between the suit's exposed electronics and any external electrical discharge. Ahsoka's hands are precise and quick. Luke assists with the cutting and the measuring, learning as he goes, asking questions that are specific rather than general, because specific questions are what the work requires. Anakin guides the process from memory, the technique he developed during the Clone Wars for shielding sensitive communications equipment in ion storm conditions, adapted here to a different geometry and higher stakes. The principle is the same. You are not trying to stop the current, you are trying to give it somewhere else to go. "The mesh has to overlap at the joints," he tells Luke. "If there's a gap, that's where the lightning finds it." "How do you know so much about lightning specifically?" "I was struck by it frequently." Ahsoka, without looking up, produces a sound that is not quite a laugh but occupies the same territory. The work continues. While Anakin guides and Ahsoka builds, Luke moves through 2 force exercises she has set him, precise, quick things, designed less to test what he can do, and more to show her exactly how he has been taught to do it. She watches him between cuts of the mesh, accumulating data without comment. When Anakin is occupied with a complex instruction sequence for the chest plate's secondary connection points, Ahsoka moves to stand beside Luke. She pitches her voice below the carrying distance of the room. "Your grip on the Force is instinctive. You lead with feeling rather than focus. Is that wrong? It's incomplete. You have the instinct of someone twice your experience. You have the control of someone who learned in crisis conditions and never had time for the fundamentals." Luke absorbs this. "So what do I need? Time, which we don't have, so we'll work with what we can build in transit." She looks at him directly. "You fight like someone who learned from a ghost." Anakin across the room, he did learn from a ghost. Ahsoka does not turn around. "Then we have work to do." The respiratory upgrade is the final technical task, and the one Anakin has been quietly dreading, not because it is the most complex, but because it is the most intimate. The compact emergency module from Ahsoka's cache gets wired in parallel with the suit's existing respirator, a redundancy that means the suit's primary failure is no longer an immediate death sentence. Ahsoka does the wiring. Anakin talks her through the integration points. While she works, he practices. The forced sustenance of his own breathing is not new to him. He has done it in fragments for years, brief stolen moments of internal focus. What he has not done is build it into a sustained, reliable secondary system. He sits with his eyes closed while Ahsoka connects the backup module, and he breathes without the suit's help. Slow, deliberate. Each breath a conscious act rather than a mechanical one. Luke watches this for a moment. You can keep yourself alive without it, he says. Not a question. If I maintain the focus, it's not comfortable, but it's possible. The suit becomes backup rather than primary, about the body being able to sustain itself through the Force if the connection was strong enough. He was right. He was right about most things. It's one of the more annoying things about him. Luke's hand is the last task, and the quietest one. Ahsoka retrieves a black market cybernetic prosthetic from the lower shelf of the cache. Partial origin, she says, which is her polite way of saying she does not want to know where it came from, and neither should they. It is not elegant. It fits. She calibrates the neural interface with the same focused precision she brought to every task today. Luke sitting still through the process with the particular stillness of someone who has decided that complaining about pain is a resource he cannot afford to spend. When it is done, Luke flexes the new fingers, looks at them, looks at his father's gloved mechanical hands. Neither of them says anything about the symmetry. At the end of it, Anakin must put the helmet back on. He has been without it for hours, longer than he has been unmasked in years. The ruined face has been visible in the workbench light through all of it, which is a fact Luke and Ahsoka have both been treating with the specific tact of people who understand that commenting on it would cost more than it gives. He picks up the helmet. He looks at it for a moment. It does not look like a prison from the outside. It looks like what it has always looked like, the most feared thing in the galaxy, rendered in black durasteel and engineering. What it is from the inside, that is the information the outside has never communicated and will never communicate, no matter how many people stand across gantries and feel the fear of it. He puts it on. The click of the seal, the modulator engaging, the red HUD returning, tactical overlays stacking back across the world. The Vader mask, reassembled from the outside in. Luke and Ahsoka are watching. The respirator breathes. How do you feel? Luke asks. The black mask is expressionless, as always. It has never been anything else. Like myself, the Vader voice says. The map Anakin builds on Ahsoka's workbench is not holographic. They do not have the equipment for it and would not use it if they did. It is paper, actual flimsy from a pad Ahsoka has been keeping as a log, the existing entries covered with broad strokes of her stylus and replaced with the target grid he constructs from memory. Paper leaves no signals. Paper has never been intercepted by an Imperial intelligence array. Paper is, operationally, the most secure medium in the galaxy. He learned this from a Clone Wars quartermaster running black market supply lines since before the Separatists existed, and it remains true. He marks 4 targets, talks through them in order of strategic value, not drama. The Death Star 2, Kyber crystal supply lines, 3 primary source routes feeding the construction zone, each a lifeline the weapon cannot replace on short notice. The Imperial Navy fueling depot network, 4 specific nodes whose loss reduces rapid deployment fleet mobility by 40%, according to the operational models Anakin helped build. The Tarkin Doctrine archives, centralized databases containing every replacement protocol for destroyed Imperial infrastructure. The Empire's institutional memory, the thing that lets it rebuild faster than its enemies can destroy. And Palpatine's guard training facility on Bespin, whose location and rotation schedule Anakin knows because he attended the design review and no one thought to restrict the meeting notes to someone who might eventually decide to use them. We don't fight, he says. We confuse. The Empire's greatest weakness is not military, it's bureaucratic. Every system depends on every other system. Pull one thread in the right place, and the next 5 threads pull themselves. Clone Wars logic, Clone Wars victories, Anakin corrects, without arrogance, a correction of the record. We won because we hit supply lines. We lost when we stopped thinking like insurgents and started thinking like an army. How much damage can 3 people actually do? The right 3 people with the right information at the right junctures? Anakin marks the first target. More than a fleet. The Crystal Intercept takes 18 hours from first contact to extraction. 12 Imperial freighters crossing a transit lane in the Outer Rim, loaded with processed Kyber crystals bound for the Death Star 2 construction zone. Anakin brings their repurposed courier in on a Vader Authority inspection heading, a channel that traffic control does not question and escort commanders do not challenge, because the last officer who challenged a Vader inspection heading transferred to a posting on Hoth and was never heard from again. Ahsoka and Luke go EVA. Anakin manages the escorts. Managing the escorts means standing in the comm bay and talking to 3 Imperial officers in Vader's voice about their inadequate formation spacing, their failure to file proper transit documentation, and their generally disappointing performance as members of a service he helped design. He does this for 47 minutes. All three officers are sufficiently occupied with surviving the conversation that no one monitors what is happening on the freighter hulls. What is happening on the freighter hulls? Ahsoka teaches Luke how to render a kyber crystal inert without destroying it. Destroying processed kyber is not an option. The resonance explosion from 12 freighters worth of crystals would be visible from 3 systems. They are not destroying anything. They are reaching into the molecular structure of each crystal through the Force, finding the specific frequency at which it resonates for weapons use, and introducing a canceling vibration. Slow work. Cold-handed, vacuum-silent, precise work. There is a third option. Ahsoka says, palms flat against a cargo container hull while Malachor is 2 systems behind them. Not destroy, not capture, transform. Luke follows her lead, learns through his hands before he learns it through his mind. When they return to the shuttle, Anakin has given all 3 escort commanders something to occupy their attention for the remainder of the month. The crystal shipment continues to the construction zone on schedule, carrying nothing the weapon can use. The second operation is Anakin alone. 4 hours at the communications array, using Vader's credentials to reach 3 Tarkin Doctrine archive nodes simultaneously. He does not crash the systems. He does not introduce anything that registers as intrusion in the monitoring logs. He locates specific construction specification files, the blueprints Imperial engineering teams use to rebuild damaged infrastructure, and he makes precise alterations, tolerances adjusted by margins too small to flag in a standard review, numbers shifted just beyond the boundary of what automated verification catches, large enough to matter when the equipment is actually constructed, small enough to look like the kind of drift that happens when a database is copied and recopied across a fleet network for years. 3 months from now, every piece of Imperial infrastructure rebuilt from these specifications will perform at 30% below rated capacity, not catastrophically, just insufficiently, enough to matter across an engagement, not enough to look like sabotage. From the exterior of the communications array, it looks like an administrative review. Luke watches from the co-pilot seat with the particular unease of someone watching something done efficiently by a person who is efficient at it for reasons that have not stopped being true. You helped design this system, Luke says. All of it. Anakin does not look up from the array. Without inflection, doesn't that? Yes, Anakin says. It does. That's why I know where to break it. In the weeks between the archive corruption and the Emperor's call, 2 fueling depot nodes go dark under circumstances that look like cascading maintenance emergencies. One communication relay serving the Outer Rim garrison network begins routing traffic through secondary channels that add 6 hours to every transmission, 6 hours that will compound over the following months into operational delays with no single identifiable cause. A personnel manifest at the BIS facility gets quietly corrupted, delaying the rotation of 4 training cohorts by 3 weeks. Nothing explodes. Nothing announces itself. The Empire does not know it is bleeding. 3 weeks in, Palpatine calls. Not a passive surveillance probe, an active holographic communication through the ship's secure command channels, the kind that Vader cannot credibly ignore. Anakin has been preparing for this call since Bespin. He takes it alone, he tells Luke and Ahsoka to be elsewhere, and he means it, and they go. The hologram resolves blue-white at the center of the comm bay, robes, silhouette, and a face that has made an art form of conveying nothing it does not choose to convey. Lord Vader. Quiet. It is always quiet with him. I have been expecting your report. My apologies for the delay, my master. Vader's cadence, the precise deference that performs submission without being it. The Skywalker pursuit has required direct personal management, and yet the boy remains at large. He is more resourceful than his record suggested. He has support. I believe Tano may be involved. I am pursuing her last confirmed position. A pause. Palpatine does not fill pauses. He uses them as instruments. You believe, the Emperor says. You have always known, Lord Vader. The Force has been difficult to read in this sector. Old dark side interference at the system level. Malachor's influence extends further than the charts indicate. I am compensating. Anakin holds the posture, the cadence, the entire emotional architecture of a Vader who has not rested in 3 weeks and is running on obsession and the refusal to admit limitation to the man who built those limitations into him. He holds it through the silence that follows, through the Emperor's eyes moving across the hologram with the quality of someone reading a document they have read before and checking for changes. Palpatine is running a calculation. He is always running a calculation. I require 2 more weeks, my master. I have a position narrowing. 2 weeks, the Emperor says. Use them wisely. The hologram ends. Anakin sits with both hands flat on the console for 30 seconds. The respirator breathes. Ahsoka appears in the doorway. She was in the rear compartment. She heard every word, which he knew she would, which is why he did not ask her to go further. How long do we have? He turns from the console. Weeks, maybe a month. He knows something is different. He cannot name it yet. I gave him a performance convincing enough to buy time, not to buy certainty. The window is closing. She absorbs this the way she absorbs everything, practically without decoration. A timeline being updated in real time. Then we accelerate. Yes, Anakin says. We do. The courier drops out of hyperspace at the Coruscant system's edge, and the galactic capital fills the entire forward viewport from corner to corner. City-planet, continent-spanning construct. 1,000 years of republic followed by 20 years of empire, all of it compressed into a single world that no longer has weather because weather would be inconvenient for the infrastructure. Even from this distance, it generates its own glow. Trillions of beings inside trillions of structures, none of them aware that 3 people in a stolen courier have just arrived with the intention of ending the thing that governs their lives. Anakin looks at it for a long time. 17 targets in 1 month. 3 Imperial Moffs removed from command through intelligence. Anakin fed to the rebellion via a dead drop protocol. Ahsoka established in the outer communications belt. The Empire's supply lines are fractured, its archive corrupted, its logistics network quietly bleeding from wounds it has not yet located. The 2-week window Palpatine gave them has been used with a precision that would have impressed even the man who trained Anakin in patience, if the man who trained him had not been Palpatine. Behind him, Luke is not who he was on Bespin. A month of daily work under Ahsoka's instruction. Relentless, specific, filling in the gaps she identified in the Malachor ruins with the focused efficiency of someone who understands that time spent inefficiently costs lives. Has built something harder and more controlled into the way he moves through the Force. He is not a Jedi Knight. Anakin has been careful to say so and to mean it. He is something more targeted than that. A capable, precise combatant who understands the Force as a living thing rather than a mechanism. Ready for this fight, if not for every fight. It is enough. It has to be. I haven't been home in a while, Anakin says. Ahsoka reaches out and puts a hand on the shoulder of the suit. The armor, the barrier between herself and whatever is still alive underneath it. She does not say anything, she does not need to. Layer 1 is the flight path. He brings the courier in on a Vader Authority approach corridor, a channel reserved for Vader's personal operations that Coruscant traffic control routes automatically without question, documentation request, or secondary verification. The same corridor he has used 200 times in another life, returning from campaigns and suppressions and the various forms of maintenance work the Empire requires of its most expensive and most broken instrument. Traffic control clears them into the upper atmosphere without comment. He does not look at the direction of the Jedi Temple as they descend. He watches the navigation console. He is aware of not looking at it the way you become aware of a sound in a dark room, peripherally against your will. Layer 2 is the cloud. The Inquisitors stationed at the Imperial Palace perimeter are not masters. They are Force-sensitive fighters trained in detection and combat, skilled at locating fear and anger because fear and anger burn bright and are easy to find. Ahsoka and Anakin work from the opposite direction. A deliberate diminishing of presence, a reduction of signature, the Force equivalent of 2 people agreeing simultaneously to take up less space in a room. The technique requires focus and costs something. Not a large something, a sustainable something. They cannot cloud Palpatine. No one clouds Palpatine, but the Inquisitors are looking for threats, and a threat is a bright thing in the Force, and they make themselves dim. The courier settles into a service bay on the palace's eastern approach without triggering anything. Layer 3 is older than the Empire. The maintenance corridors beneath Coruscant's governmental district predate the current configuration by centuries. They were built when the Jedi Temple and what is now the Imperial Palace shared the same infrastructure network. Power, water processing, atmospheric cycling, before the buildings above them were given different names and different purposes. The Empire surveyed the structures when it repurposed them. It did not survey what was underneath, because what was underneath was not on the relevant forms. And thorough bureaucratic organizations do not investigate what is not on the relevant forms. Anakin knows these passages because he used them during his Padawan years to leave the temple after curfew. The route he found was too old for anyone to think to monitor. He never got caught. He finds it now without hesitation. 12 meters below a water processing junction, an access panel sealed with the original Republic lock mechanism that the Imperial retrofit missed. The Force opens it in 3 seconds. After you, he says. Ahsoka looks at the passage, then at him. You broke curfew. F frequently. Through here. 11, maybe 12 times. Through here. She goes first. Luke follows. Anakin last, sealing the panel behind them. 40 minutes through the maintenance corridors beneath a dead civilization, moving toward the man who killed it. The passages are narrow and cold, lit only by the strips Ahsoka carries, running through the mechanical spaces that no one visits between the walls that no one thinks about. Anakin sets the pace and knows every turn. The Force tells him where the patrol rotations run above them. He routes around each one without breaking stride. Luke moves well in the dark. A month ago, he would have needed to concentrate on the footwork. Now his body handles it, and his mind is somewhere quieter, somewhere useful, tracking the space around them through the Force without being asked to, noting exits and contacts as a matter of habit rather than effort. Ahsoka notices. She says nothing. The silence in the corridor is enough. They reach the outer ring of the throne room access floors in 40 minutes. Anakin stops them in an alcove off the approach corridor. The throne room doors are 40 meters ahead. Visible from the alcove's edge is a dark mass at the corridor's end, massive and ceremonial, the kind of doors that communicate something deliberate about the space behind them. He can feel Palpatine through the Force, present, alert. The cloud held long enough to prevent early warning, but proximity is its own signal, and Palpatine has never needed much. 3 minutes of preparation, possibly less. Anakin insists on the briefing before they move. He does not rush it. He does not let urgency enter his voice. This is the last thing he controls before the throne room, and he controls it fully. He will use lightning as the primary weapon, not to injure, to separate, to isolate. His opening strike will go to whoever he identifies as least prepared, because the opening move is always a test. He will talk during the fight. Talk, Luke says. The talking is the weapon. Every sentence is designed to introduce a doubt, a hesitation, half a second of attention turned inward instead of outward. Do not engage with what he says. Do not answer it. Do not let it find a grip. Listen to the Force, not to him. How do we coordinate? Luke asks. We don't. Anakin is precise about this. It is the most important tactical point in the briefing. He can predict coordinated attack because coordinated attack has patterns, and patterns are what he reads. Fight like yourself, each of us fighting only the way we fight. He cannot run 3 unpredictable opponents simultaneously. That is the kill box. Take the flanks. Deny him mobility. Keep him from finding elevation. She nods once. She has already planned this. He can tell. He looks at Luke. Don't hold back. I wasn't planning to. I know. A beat. I'm telling you it's okay. Luke holds the mask's gaze across the narrow alcove for a moment. The focused attention of someone who has spent a month learning to read the person behind the armor rather than the armor itself. You're going to be okay, he says. I know you think you might not be, but you are. The respirator breathes. Let's go. They stand at the throne room doors. On the other side of them, a man with 3 minutes of preparation and 1,000 years of accumulated readiness and the specific patience of someone who has never once, in the full span of his life, been genuinely surprised by an enemy he had time to study. He has not had time to study this. Ready? Anakin asks. Born ready, Ahsoka says. Luke does not answer. He reaches to his belt and ignites his lightsaber. Green, not the blue of Tatooine and inherited legacy. Not red. Green, the deliberate chosen green of a blade he built himself during the transit from Malachor in the same night hours he spent learning to move silently through corridors and practicing sustaining his own breath through the Force. He built it from components in Ahsoka's cache, from crystal work she supervised, from a design that is entirely his own. A different color from the blue blade he lost on Bespin. Something new, something chosen. He built a new one. The doors open. The throne room is cold and vast and lit by the light of a city that does not know what is happening inside it. Palpatine is not on the throne. He stands at the viewport with his back to the room. The deliberate posture of a man who has decided that turning to face an approach is an acknowledgement he does not owe. Coruscant fills the glass behind him, billions of points of light, the accumulated brightness of a civilization he has spent decades managing like a private asset. He speaks before they have fully crossed the threshold. Lord Vader and guests. His voice has not changed. Quiet. The specific quietness of someone who has never needed volume to communicate the relevant information. He turns, takes the three of them in with the look of an evaluator encountering an unexpected variable in a model he believed complete. Not alarm, not theater. Already revising. His eyes move across Luke, across Ahsoka, and settle on Anakin, and something flickers in them that is not surprise. Recognition. He has known something was wrong for weeks. He has been calculating what it meant, and waiting, because waiting is what he does better than anything alive. Interesting, he says. You've been busy. I have. You believe you've come to end this. I don't believe anything, Anakin says. I know. There's a difference. Palpatine begins with words. He always begins with words. In the complete inventory of his weapons, language is the first and most precise, the instrument refined across decades of Senate floors and private audiences, and the specific, intimate architecture of destroying people who trusted him. The lightsabers and the lightning are what comes after the words have done their work. He does not address them as a group. He addresses each one separately, each sentence cut for a specific lock. To Luke, standing at Anakin's left, your father destroyed the Jedi Order. He destroyed your mother. He destroyed every student he ever trained. You are standing beside the author of everything you've lost, trusting him with your life. A pause, the pause of someone allowing a point to land before moving to the next one. Is that wisdom or desperation? To Ahsoka, positioned right, he abandoned you, twice, once to a council that never deserved you and once to 20 years of darkness you carried alone. Loyalty to a dead man kept you from everything you could have been. Quiet, always quiet, he is still that man. To Anakin, you want to undo what you built. But the galaxy you broke still belongs to me, and you have belonged to me since Mustafar. He lets the silence carry the rest. None of them respond. Ahsoka does not move. Anakin stands in the center of the throne room with both hands at his sides and feels the force pressure behind Palpatine's voice pressing at the edges of all three of them. The Sith ability to make language heavier than language, to turn sentences into architecture inside a person's mind, and watches all of them refuse to bite. The mask does not permit smiling. He smiles behind the mask. He only has words. He's already lost. The lightning opens without announcement, not at Anakin, at Luke. The test, always the test, the probe designed to determine what the variable will sacrifice when what it loves is threatened. Luke's right hand comes up, not the saber, the hand. The force flows through the new prosthetic fingers and catches the lightning imperfectly and painfully, redirecting most of it into the stone floor in a crack of energy that leaves a scar in the tile from here to the base of the throne. Not elegant, functional. He is on his feet when the discharge clears. Palpatine's eyes narrow by a fraction. He recalculates. The room moves. Anakin absorbs. This is his role, and he takes it without hesitation, because it is both effective and appropriate. Every lightning strike Palpatine sends, Anakin steps into the path of and receives. The modified suit holds Mandalorian mesh, Beskar fragments, 4 hours of Ahsoka's work on Malachor, the accumulated effort of people who understood that the prison had to become the tank before any of this was possible. The suit handles the discharge. The man inside feels every volt as the specific variety of pain he has been living with for 22 years wearing a new expression. He does not fall. He stands as the lightning rod and does not perform the acceptance of it. It simply is what it is. He made this mess. He can take the hits. Ahsoka moves like the distilled combat product of 4 decades of survival, both white blades working the flanks, denying Palpatine the elevated positions in the room, cutting off retreat to the viewport and the throne's dais, forcing him to defend and rotate, and give ground rather than press and dictate. She does not attempt to kill him in the opening minutes. She attempts to keep him in the center of the room. She succeeds. Luke presses forward. He does not try to match Palpatine's technique. There is no matching a technique refined across a century of study, and a month of intensive training is not a century. What Luke does instead is fight like himself, which is what Anakin told him to do in an alcove 40 meters back, and which means momentum and environmental instinct and the specific creative aggression that is, whether either of them would be comfortable acknowledging it. The best thing Anakin Skywalker ever inadvertently passed down. The throne pulled sideways to break footing, a section of railing torn free and redirected. The force used as a weight added to every physical strike rather than a substitute for it. He keeps advancing. For the first time in decades, Palpatine is fully occupied. Palpatine reaches into the suit. Anakin feels it. The probe toward the kill switch relays. The familiar architecture of Imperial control reaching through the Force for the emergency shutdown in the chest plate. The failsafe that has never needed to be used because it has never needed to be tested. The contingency at the heart of every contingency. It finds nothing. 3 primary relay nodes, 2 secondary redundancies, 1 emergency shutdown, all of it sitting in a waste container on Malachor, removed by careful hands following precise instructions 3 weeks ago. The pause in Palpatine's Force presence lasts 1 second. In the context of this fight, it is a very long time. Anakin steps into it. We took that out on Malachor 3 weeks ago, right next to the secondary relay you installed before the Battle of Geonosis. You cannot know. I helped you build this suit, he advances. The lightning is still coming and he is still walking into it. I was present for every modification. I watched you make me dependent on machinery I designed, because a weapon that can be switched off is a weapon that never needs to be feared. I know every wire. I have always known every wire. You are broken. The suit is mine now. His voice carries no heat, no triumph, just the flat certainty of a statement that has been true for 3 weeks and is simply being acknowledged aloud for the first time. All of it. Mine. Palpatine throws everything. Maximum lightning. Not targeted, not measured, but total, a storm of raw Sith power that fills the center of the throne room in blue-white discharge and does not stop. Force pressure simultaneously against all 3 of them, outward, trying to break the formation that has been containing him for the past several minutes. Then the ceiling. The Force reaching into the ancient stonework, pulling at the supports, trying to bring the upper structure down on all of them at once. Luke is thrown into the wall, he hits it hard and does not stay down. Ahsoka takes a graze along her left arm and does not break position. Anakin walks into the center of the storm. The insulation holds. He walks through the maximum discharge of the most powerful Sith Lord in 1,000 years and puts 1 foot in front of the other and does not stop. The suit manages the current. The man inside feels every volt as the specific register of pain he has been living in for 22 years, arriving now in volume, and he does not let it make any decisions. The pain has always been information. He stopped letting it govern him the moment he put the helmet back on a dead planet and said, like myself, step. And another, in this moment, this unrepeatable convergence of everything he has been and everything he chose to become. There is no division in him. The tactical fury that made Darth Vader the most feared thing in the galaxy, moving entirely through the will that chose to die carrying his son out of the Emperor's throne room, rather than live 1 more day inside the Emperor's design. Neither Jedi nor Sith, both. The thing that prophecy pointed toward across 1,000 years without ever finding a name for it, because it had no name until the person it described existed to give it one. The chosen one, whole. He reaches Palpatine. 1 movement, 1 strike. Not lightning. He has absorbed enough lightning for every lifetime he will ever have. Not telekinesis. A lightsaber, the red blade that came with this body and this suit, and this long, costly penance, used once precisely in the way that a Jedi ends something. Not theatrical, not prolonged, clean. The Emperor falls. The throne room is silent. The respirator breathes. Luke is on 1 knee 3 meters away, both hands burned across the palms and forearms, the prosthetic fingers on the right hand scoring smoke from the discharge that passed through them. Breathing hard, alive. He looks at his father across the destroyed room with the expression of someone whose understanding of what was possible has just been permanently revised. Ahsoka stands at the room's far edge with her left arm pressed to her side, looking at the space where Palpatine was standing, not with triumph, not with grief, with the specific practical expression of someone closing a very long file. Anakin stands at the center of the room. The suit's internal diagnostics are running through warnings he does not have time to be alarmed about. The insulation held, but the structural damage is significant, and his hours of operational capacity have been reduced to a smaller number than he would prefer. He notes it, files it, turns. Are you both alive? They answer at almost exactly the same moment. Yes, that's what matters. He does not pause. He crosses to the Emperor's communications console and begins transmitting. The kill code for the Death Star 2 construction, built and encoded and held in reserve since the 2nd week of operations. It goes out on the Emperor's own authentication frequency, with the Emperor's own credentials, to 17 key Imperial commanders who will wake to a chain of command crisis with no succession protocol and no one to call. The Empire does not fall in an hour, but it begins to fall. The Empire didn't end cleanly. It never does. An organization built over 2 decades by a man who wanted nothing to last after him. That kind of structure resists even its own death. There were holdouts. There were warlords claiming sectors they had no mandate to claim. There were 6 months of negotiations that Ahsoka handled because she is infinitely better at politics than I have ever been. And she knows it, and she did it anyway. The rebellion became something else. Mon Mothma called it an alliance. I called it a start. Luke called it home. I met Leia for the first time on Coruscant, 5 days after the throne room. She came with Mon Mothma's delegation. She knew who I was, Luke had told her, weeks before, and she had carried the information the way she carries everything, completely, without letting it show until she was ready. She walked into the room and she looked at me for a long time with the specific expression of someone who has already decided what to do and is waiting for the other party to confirm they understand the situation. Then she said, "You have a lot to answer for." And I said, "I know." And she said, "Good, we'll start tomorrow." That was 3 months ago. We are still talking. We will be for a long time. That is acceptable to me. I have time. It is, given everything, something very close to a miracle that I have time. I asked if I could go home, just once, to see it before whatever comes next. Luke said yes without hesitation, which is entirely characteristic. Ahsoka said she would come with me, which I had expected. Leia said she would arrange the security detail, which I had not expected, not the offer itself, but the way she said it, the specific tone of someone taking responsibility for a person they have decided matters. I don't think she recognized the echo in it. I recognized it immediately. It was her mother's voice, used for her mother's purposes, coming out of a face that is her mother's face and her own face simultaneously. I didn't say anything. Some things you carry quietly. Naboo arrives through the viewport as it always has. The curve of it, the blue-green, the particular quality of a planet that has not been destroyed or subjugated or strip-mined into compliance. The lake country in the late afternoon, the light doing what light does here, which is arrive warm and stay longer than it has any right to. The terrace of the lake house is stone and open air, and the sound of water on the shore below. Birds in the trees, wind moving through grass that goes all the way to the water's edge. The smell of it, actual weather, actual atmosphere, not processed through filters and recycled through a suit's internal systems, arrives as something close to overwhelming, and is handled as everything in this body is handled, by filing it and continuing. Anakin sits in a medical mobility chair on the terrace. The suit's structural damage from the throne room has not been fully addressed. That is a longer project, a slower one, the kind that requires specialists and time and the specific awkwardness of allowing people who were recently enemies to help keep you alive. The life support functions. The chair manages what the suit's mobility systems no longer can. He is not broken. He is, for the first time in this story, resting. The lake moves below the terrace. The respirator moves with it, present, consistent, the rhythm that has been the constant of this entire story, but quieter here, less intrusive, because everything else is louder. Malachor was near silence. Bespin was industrial wind. Coruscant was the mechanical noise of uncountable millions of lives stacked on top of each other. Naboo is alive in the old specific way of a place that has not had that life argued out of it. He sits and lets it be loud. Luke and Leia arrive together. Leia's presence in the Force is what it has always been. The sunlight on water signature Anakin has been carrying in his awareness for months now. Bright and controlled, precise in ways she has never been taught to be, and simply is. She walks onto the terrace and sits across from him in the chair that has been left there, and she looks at him with the full evaluating intelligence of someone who has spent her entire life reading rooms and people and situations, and she does not hold his hand. That is a future scene, not this one. What she does instead is be present entirely and voluntarily, which is the harder thing to give and costs more than she lets him see. "Tell me about her," Leia says. "Your mother," Anakin says. Not a question, confirming what they both understand they are doing here. "Yes," he tells them, both of them. Luke to his left, Leia across from him, the sun somewhere above the cloud cover beginning its descent toward the lake country's hills. He tells them about Padme Amidala's laugh, which was rare and therefore worth cataloging. The specific way she argued, which was to let you finish your point completely and then dismantle it with the precision of someone who had already identified the flaw in the third sentence, and chose not to interrupt because interrupting would be impolite. The fact that she was twice as intelligent as every person in every room she ever entered, and had the grace, most of the time, not to let them know it. The way she loved, not the fact of it, but the texture of it. The practical, active, showing-up quality of how she directed her attention at people when she had decided they mattered. The way she faced loss, which was directly, with the specific courage of someone who has been facing it since she was 14, and has learned that looking away does not reduce the cost. He does not cry. The suit will not allow it, and he has spent 3 months learning to carry grief differently, not to suppress it, which is what Vader did and what eventually compressed it into something structural and toxic, but to hold it as a weight that belongs to him and move with it rather than against it. Luke and Leia listen. They do not interrupt. When he finishes, the silence that follows has a different quality than the silences earlier in the story. Less weight, more space. The gap between father and daughter, which 3 months ago was the full width of everything he had done and everything she had survived without him, is not closed, but it is fractionally smaller than it was. The fraction is everything. Ahsoka has been at the edge of the terrace the entire time, sitting on the stone railing, facing the lake, giving them the specific privacy of someone who is present but not watching. When Anakin finishes talking and the silence settles, she speaks without turning. I talked to Rex. The name lands in the air and does its work. Rex, Captain Rex, whose inhibitor chip Ahsoka removed in a corridor of a crashing ship during the chaos of Order 66, who fought through the troopers following the order to get her out alive, who survived to carry every day of that near miss as the specific weight of someone who knows exactly how close the edge was, and chose to step back from it. How is he? Anakin asks. Impossible. Stubborn, old, a pause. He says hello. Tell him I said. I know, Ahsoka says. I'll tell him. She looks at Anakin in the mobility chair, in the modified suit, at the edge of the lake that was the last place he was happy before Mustafar made happiness a theoretical concept. She looks at him with the full, unguarded depth of someone who has known this person across every version of them and chosen each time to keep knowing them. You know, she says, I never actually told you. Told me what? That you were a good teacher. The lake is very quiet. You were better, Anakin says. She turns back to the water. I had a good teacher. Night comes to the lake country the way night comes to places that have not been disturbed. Gradually, honestly, without announcement. The light shifts through stages and arrives at dark through the full spectrum of what comes between. Luke and Leia go inside at some point. He can hear them through the terrace door, some minor disagreement about something domestic and completely ordinary, the kind of argument that happens between people who are in the same space and have decided to remain there. He cannot hear the words. He does not need to. The frequency of it is enough. Ahsoka stays on the railing. She does not speak again and does not need to. Anakin sits with the lake and reaches out into the Force. Not to track, not to search, not to calculate or plan or identify threats or run tactical simulations. Just to feel. The fish in the dark water below the terrace, the insects in the grass along the shore. The specific warmth of 2 Skywalker children inside arguing about something that will not matter tomorrow and will be entirely forgotten by the week after, which is exactly as it should be. The ancient presence of the lake itself, which was here before any of this and will be here long after, indifferent and clean. There is nothing he is trying to do. He has done it. He is still here. He will wake tomorrow and begin the long actual work of what comes next. The arguments with Leia that are the shape of a relationship being slowly built, the training sessions with Luke that are not finished and will not be for years, the strategy debates with Ahsoka about a galaxy that is not stabilized and will require genuine, sustained, unglamorous effort to hold, medical appointments, political obligations, the granular, real, necessary complications of a galaxy that did not end when the Emperor died and was never going to. He has no illusions about forgiveness. He does not carry a plan for being loved. He carries what he has. One day, and then another, and then another, and the specific knowledge that the people inside this house chose to come here to this place with him tonight. The respirator breathes. The lake moves. Anakin Skywalker is at peace. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.